I'm Marcus Owens. I work in the space of community and economic opportunity development, which is a big loaded word. I'm trying to change the system for how it works for us. It hasn't worked for us in the past. I've worked in entrepreneurship. It hasn't worked there for us in the past. I've worked in the space of education, health and wellness, community and culture, and employment over this past year and a half. So I want to share a little bit around what's happening in the employment field. I'm going to have some information up that's going to pop up, so have your cameras ready. You can take it. There will be QR codes and things like that. It will take you to some links. I'm going to share some opportunities with you, so be looking for that. But largely, I want to talk to you first a little bit about the trends. Can you hit the next couple slides? One more. So I'm going to zoom in because employment is huge. There's a lot going on, everything from degree jobs down to entry-level jobs. But I want to zoom in on what's happening between companies and the labor force. Right now, there's, I think, one or two job openings for every one person that's available to work right now in the state of Minnesota. And so companies are having a hard time filling their roles. They're looking for all kinds of solutions. But unfortunately, they're working in this old paradigm where you need a 4-year degree. They've kept a barrier between people that don't have degrees and folks that have degrees. And it's creating this kind of circular kind of motion of like, you get a degree, you may not get a degree, you may go to college, you may not finish, but you kind of hit a ceiling when you hit the corporate level. You'll find jobs like customer service, you'll find jobs like retail, but it's hard to like break through the barriers. And so companies have to change their paradigm. And so there's a movement of many different parts across the country that are trying to change that dynamic. And think about skills first. So going from degrees to skills, right? There's a lot of skill-based training. And so you'll see a lot of boot camps now. There's a lot of movement around apprenticeships. And there's a difference between internships and apprenticeships. Internships are often reserved for folks that are working on their degree right now and are probably going to graduate, and that's kind of their first job. Apprenticeship is more or less you're going to start working in the job over a period of time, and you may be able to have an opportunity afterwards, but largely you get the skills that you need to take on to the next opportunity. Inclusive hiring. You know, we have to open the barriers, so you may see things in the state of Minnesota the last 10 years, ban the box, not having to put down whether or not you have a felony or other record, right? There's still a lot of work to be done here, but employers are starting to realize, like, we have to tap everybody in. There's too many people available to the opportunities, and it's just a mismatch. And then there's a lot of things happening on the digital front. So some of the things I'm going to share with you today is around the digital economy. And so you'll see things, Udemy, there's Cardinal online. There's a lot of online programs that will give you certificates if you just go through a couple online modules. And the more certificates you're able to collect, that's just building your skill base. Internally, companies are realizing that they have an untapped workforce that they haven't trained and developed. So there's a lot of internal things. So you may have a job today. You need to start looking at opportunities within the company to figure out how you can train. There's training development programs and things like that. And then future-proofing. So look at what's happening in automation right now. Whether you're in manufacturing, you're in coding, you're in accounting, there's a lot of jobs that may not be here tomorrow. So pay attention and do your homework on what's actually happening to the job that you may be in today. Next slide. The first opportunity I want to share with you is around apprenticeships. So Connects MSP is led by a black woman, Aisha Collins McKenzie, and she's doing a lot of work right now to connect black folks and other folks with opportunities for apprenticeships, first employment, things like that. This QR code will take you to sign up to be a part of the network so that you can get information. We were working with them. She's doing a big effort around this Minnesota Apprenticeship Network. And what they're doing right now is working with companies such as Aon, Accenture, Cargill, Medtronic, US Bank, a lot of the big companies that you hear about, and they're creating apprenticeship programs. And the companies don't know what they're doing. So they're connecting them with talent development organizations. You may know PPL, Hired, Summit, other organizations that you see in the community. They're starting to make these relationships so that you can get access to apprenticeships. So good opportunity for you to sign up, get information. It will come to you. They're doing the Minnesota, I think next week or 2 weeks from now is the Minnesota Apprenticeship Week. So there's a lot of different efforts and a lot of different events that you can attend to learn about apprenticeships. This past spring, I worked with Cargill to set up an apprenticeship. They had 9 apprentices that were working in data and analysts, operation analysts, and then admin. These folks are making $50,000 a year in this apprenticeship program, and if they made it through the year, they were guaranteed a job on the back end, full benefits, and then full access without a degree to all different type of opportunities. So apprenticeship, a lot of times what's happening is these jobs were they were degree credentialed before, meaning that you had to have a degree, but if you make it through the apprenticeship, that goes away. Now, if you still want to go and get your degree, that's okay. So like Medtronic, for instance, they have opportunities where if you are employed at Medtronic, they will pay for your degree. And you can work in their manufacturing field, things like that. So pay attention to this. Let's go to the next slide. 110, I've been working with them for the last year and a half. This is an effort nationwide. I think they're in 16 markets right now, but they're working with employers and talent developers to create opportunity. Again, the things that I've been telling you about are in terms of re-credentialing jobs, changing the paradigm. 110 has been pushing this for the last 3 years and are working with companies to create real opportunities here. Now, their website, I will admit, is not the best. However, there are opportunities on there today. There's 86 different jobs in the market today with 15 different companies. Everything from manufacturing, to marketing, to banking, to real estate, to insurance. There's a lot of different opportunities, and you can go on, create a profile, and on there, you can start to search the opportunities, and I'll share a couple of those with you today. But 110, I'm acting as their community development lead, so I work with companies, also work with the talent development ecosystem here to start to bridge the opportunity. So at the end, I'll give you my email. If you see an opportunity or you have questions about 110, you can email me. I'll get you connected with that. Next slide, please. First opportunity, Wells Fargo. They have a talent development program right now. There's roles in engineering, information security, operations, business consultancy, technology, analytics. These are all the jobs of the future. These are things that companies across the board are looking for. They're looking for people right now. There are, I believe, 14 different opportunities today that you can actually apply for and look up with one of these, and they're actually across the country too. So there's jobs here, there's some of them are hybrid remote, and then there's somewhere that if you want to move to Dallas, if you want to move to Charlotte, there's opportunity as well here. And then the second one, if you're not into the digital space, you're not in the tech space, here's technician in manufacturing space. So Delta has jobs all the time around their maintenance and support mechanic work. And so the aircraft support mechanic and then the aircraft maintenance technician is a pathway. So you start as an ASM, and you're getting right into the ground. This is a great entry-level opportunity for you. You get benefits, you get flight benefits. So if you want to travel the world, here's a great company for you to work for. But then you can get a career path into the aircraft maintenance technician world. And so, again, this is a way to use your hands, but then also create a career for yourself. So that's my time. Before I leave you, is there any questions that I can answer for you? So the question was, does this extend down to teenagers, so below 18? The jobs I shared with you are likely going to be 18 plus. However, the apprenticeship network, so the talent network I shared with you all, there are organizations that are working with high schoolers. Doherty Family Solutions is an organization that works with high schoolers, and they get them into these opportunities, whether it's in the digital tech space, analyst space, et cetera. Doherty Family Solutions.
We continue. The next part of the presentation is a critical consideration: insurance planning, estate planning, and tax preparation. Tony Moore is here. Tony Moore is Senior Employee Benefits Consultant with USI Insurance Services, focusing on insurance and estate planning. And also Rene Isuk is here, President of Prosper Link Tax Group, tax preparation. Gentlemen, come on up.
Everybody hear me? Great. Tony Moore, USI. I guess I'll start off by saying I'm here because of Mr. Trent Bauman. We had lunch. Well, actually, Trent was talking about 2 months ago at another Black-inspired event, in which case he had mentioned, and some of the things you need to do is have life insurance. And then he just left that like. Just left it out there. And I was saying, what kind of life insurance, Trent? Tell him. So we finally got together. He took me to a spot. I owe him a lunch. By the way, those deviled eggs with the shrimp. Awesome. And we were talking that most people, and when I mean most people, I've had over 3,000 conversations with most people, don't understand life insurance, especially if they are black and brown people. And so I spent my entire career trying to talk to folks of color and changing the narrative as to, I don't need something I'm never going to use. And so before I kick it over to my colleague and go into, because I don't know how we're going to do this, we're going to do sort of a speech or a back and forth conversation. I will let you know that from the standpoint of having life insurance and the need for life insurance is based off of two things that I will tell you. It's about you and everything we talked about today, because most of you were thinking, well, I don't need it, so it ain't for me. But it's really about for your loved ones and the people behind you, and everything that we talked about today gets lost when folks die, because it goes back to the man, and this is how you stop it. It's how you stop things that happen in the communities, such as police brutality and the things that happen to black folks through police, all those things. When billion-dollar companies get involved, they shut all that down. So that's why you need life insurance. There's different types of it. I'll touch on it in a little bit, but for the most part, that's why you need it. It's not always just for you. It's about for your legacy. And so the question is do you want to have a legacy? That's what we're going to answer to take action today. Thank you.
Testing 1, 2. Okay, good. Again, name is Rene Isuk, managing principal of ProsperLink Tax Group. And before I go in and piggyback on my colleague here, one of the reasons why we say it's ProsperLink Tax Group, the mission of our firm is everyone has a God-given right to prosper, but it is up to the individual to exercise those rights to prosper. And one of those ways that you exercise those rights is to understand, the opportunities and understand the importance of those things. In our area, we do tax planning. A lot of people say tax preparation because that's the foundation. But in order to prepare a tax correctly, there needs to be planning and there needs to be strategy. And in talking with my colleague here, he brought up life insurance. You see a lot of your wealthy individuals that are using life insurance primarily to keep their legacy, but also secondarily for tax planning purposes. There are some advantages there when you have life insurance that you can sometimes access those funds tax-free to start building your legacy. Now, we may not get into that, but this is what the summit is knowing those rights that you have and exercising those in a way that you can consistently have a residual legacy for your family and your community. Now, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to go back and forth. We're going to be respectful about time. I would just say that a lot of people are scared to file taxes. A lot of people don't want to file taxes. A lot of people have their own ideas about filing taxes, but to be honest with you, filing taxes is one of the foundation blocks to building wealth, because the way that you do it, the way that you plan on how to prepare those taxes can actually dictate what type of financing you have, can dictate what type of business opportunities you have, can dictate, in a sense, what type of insurance opportunities that you have to enhance your family and to enhance your businesses. And I'll turn that back over to my colleague.
Thank you. So one of the things Rene had said is wealthy people use life insurance. While life insurance is for everybody, there is a code known out there as code 7702. Now, I just mentioned something that you guys just all glossed over on, rule 7702. They have another rule that you guys might have heard about. It's 401, 403. But y'all don't know nothing about 7702. 7,300 and some odd numbers down past the ones you heard about, which goes all the way back to the earlier conversations. We are not people that are in the rooms to make those codes to know how to get ahead of things. Just found out, 40 years in the business, we're behind 5 years from all the white guys or all the others that don't look like us taking advantage of programs. Why? Because we weren't in the room. So why I say you need life insurance, this conversation is really bigger than that, but the bottom line is this, is that you need to have somebody that knows something. And by the way, I'm talking from a position, I don't sell life insurance anymore unless you make over $200,000. So what I'm giving you right now is free game. There is no skin off my back to share this information for you. So I want everybody to come up because I care, because I know how it works. But back to 7702, it is the gateway to be able to use yourself because you are your own asset. We're talking about having assets. You are your own assets. You are your own self-worth. What are you worth? What are you worth to your family? What are you worth to your community? That's why you need to have life insurance. And while there's term, universal life, and variable life, and whole life, I would say for everybody, if I don't get a chance to speak about anything else, you need to talk to a tax professional that knows how to get you something known as a return of premium policy. That way it stops everybody in here from saying, I don't need to have life insurance. Why? Because I'm never going to use it. And I just wasted my money, like renting it, right? Like having a rental property. That's why you would go and get a property. What if everything you paid for your life insurance when you were done paying for it ended up back in your pocket and you had it as an asset? Return a premium or a blended policy. It's built with a term policy and a whole life policy. So talk to a professional that you can walk into and say, hey, you know anything about a blended policy? That's what I'm interested in. I don't want something that's going to be temporary. I might outlive the temporary and then I lost my money. I want all my money back with equity.
I like that segue. Get me excited here. So when he was talking about having a tax professional speak to you about life insurance, about return of premiums, a lot of times you see wealthy individuals, and not even necessarily wealthy individuals that we have, but individuals that understand legacy building. And a lot of times when you are applying for insurance of a higher magnitude than most, a lot of insurance companies are going to ask, well, why do you need this amount of money? They're going to go ahead and examine your tax return over the last few years to make sure that you are actually applying for the right reason. You can't necessarily come in and say, yeah, I want $50 million. Well, what's the reason for that $50 million? Show us that you're worth $50 million worth of an asset. That starts with the tax return. So what I'm going to say here now, if you have some time to go ahead and take notes, I want to actually give you a couple of nuggets here as far as filing a tax return. There is something called tax compliance. Now, the IRS says that if you want to be tax compliant, all you have to do is file your most recent 6 years of returns. So if you've never filed returns in your life, you can be deemed compliant if you have filed your most recent 6 years of tax returns. Now, I said file, not necessarily pay. All I said was file. Here's the reason why it's important to do that. When you file a tax return, you have turned into the IRS reporting what you have done on your own volition, and it starts what we call a statute of limitations. Statute of limitations means that they have 3 years to go ahead and audit your return. If you never file a return, the IRS and other state regulations can go ahead and file a return for you. Sometimes they call it commissioner filed return. Sometimes they call it substitute for return. Why do I bring that up? Because if you have somebody else filing your return, there is no statute of limitations. So that means instead of that 3 years that they have in order to look at your return, they can look at your return for life. Case in point, case study here. $300,000 for a client, never filed that return. 26 years later, still $300,000. But guess what? Because that client never filed the return, the IRS kept renewing that statute because there is no statute of limitations. So that was impeding on his progress in order to build his legacy. So when in doubt, file the return, start the clock, so that after those 3 years, unless you're committing fraudulent activity, the IRS can't come and get you at that point. Okay, or rewind it back. Yes, yes. So, compliance, 6 years, most recent returns. IRS has 3 years to look at those returns. After 3 years, they can't audit your return unless they think it's fraud. If you never file a return, the statute has never started. So you've never filed a return, the IRS can add whatever they think is according to your income, even if it's not true. And if you did not sign off on that return, they can keep adding penalties and interest. So whatever it is, always file a return.
I'm gonna shift gears. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because I'm here with another professional, and I'm gonna ask the questions that a lot of y'all probably want to ask or should ask, but don't know to ask. So Rene, as a tax professional and preparer, do you just do tax returns, or do you also, based off of who your clientele is, do something where you might either suggest some things that they should start to do in their future legacy planning so that when they come back next year, they have a better tax return, or they have better education along the way of not just coming with their 1040, turning it in, having you look over it, charge them $300 and move on?
Absolutely. We talk to professionals like yourself. We talk to financial advisors because, again, we said that tax preparation is the foundation to building the wealth. But there's harmony. It's part of finance. So we talk to all the professionals. We engage with insurance professionals. We engage with financial advisors because tax planning is not coming in before April 15th and just filing a return. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities. Tax planning actually starts January 1st of that year so that you can make sure you take all the opportunities the law affords you in order to put yourself and your family in the best position.
Have you ever had the ability to work with someone that if they were to say, I don't know, move out to the country, buy a piece of property, and then they can have animals on their land, whatever that is, and that could be an extra write-off for them. But there's somebody that might qualify for that or have a dream of doing that, but they didn't know that if they do that, it's going to be more beneficial to them than just maybe buying a piece of property in the city or anything of those nature where there's other different tax laws and codes that people could take advantage of based off of having those 3 to 5 year conversations with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Buying land, buying some type of asset outside of the country could actually provide you a write-off in the U.S. It's called a tax credit. The U.S. is not going to go ahead and double tax you. So depending on the country that you actually purchased that property or that asset in, depending on that treaty actually may be tax favored. And as we have those conversations with those individuals, well, guess what? There's a life insurance piece that comes there. And that's where we engage in these individuals. Now you have more assets. Now you have more to protect for your legacy. Now we need to do a review of your insurance portfolio to make sure that everything is covered. And that's why we send individuals to this gentleman here.
One of the last pieces here I'm going to put out here is, have any of you ever heard of affinity banking? Okay. I just wanted to know if somebody heard about it. So basically what happens is in life insurance, you can build equity in a life insurance policy just like you can in real estate. You can switch them over under a 1035 exchange just like you can in real estate and not take penalties. More importantly, as you build your life insurance policy, you can use it against your own asset to buy all the things that you might want to need in life, especially the low-level things like a car. Keep it for 30 years. You now have children. You can pay for their education where so their mind's a terrible thing to waste. You let them go get the loan. After they get the loan, they complete, they graduate. You tell them you're going to pay it back at whatever percentage they get the good grades. They do 50% work, they get 50%. Use your policy to take that off, they got to do the rest. So there are things you can do to build up an equity that allows you to build your equity. And then if you don't spend it, because like you said, don't want to lose your money, it also falls into being a portion of your investment portfolio for your retirement. So that's my time. I'm going to send it back to Rene. Do you have anything else to add?
No, the only thing that I would close with is that what we've just talked about here in the last 5 minutes is basically how to create your own economy for your family.
This is about telling the story. Testify. Go ahead.
My name is James Crumble. I am a real estate developer. I grew up here in the cities in Minneapolis. I graduated from Dunwoody College. Okay. Graduated from Dunwoody College in Minneapolis here locally. In early 2021, I was sitting kind of where you guys were here. I actually purchased my first property early 2021. David invited me to something similar to this, and this is why I want to stress how important networking and resources is. David invited me to something similar to this. He introduced me to the program that he was actually just speaking about, the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. From that point, I had owned a single duplex. I was actually the very first homeowner in my entire family, and I was the first to graduate college. So I had one duplex until early 2021. David introduced me to the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund program. I ended up closing on my first 21-unit property, I want to say less than 6 months later. I think it took a total of 6 months start to finish. So from the beginning of the process all the way to the end, it was a total 6-month timeline start to finish. So this can actually be done. David spoke about the financing being up to 95%, and that is absolutely accurate. And there are actual ways to even close that gap even further. There are different resources out there that are available from the city. And also, I learned of these resources through Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. They're a great tool. I stress to everyone to learn as much as you can about their program, because they do fund based on character. Your credit score is going to be somewhat of a factor, but your project is the biggest factor of all. After that project, I didn't stop there. I actually closed on another project. I did that within, I want to say, 9 months of that project. So that was a total of 39 units. So in a matter of 19 months, I think I acquired just under $6 million worth of property. So David is absolutely accurate. The program works. It is a great way to do this. It can be done. Like I said, you got 85% plus 80%, 85%. It can get it up to 95, but then you can also close that gap by doing affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is not a get-rich-quick thing. This is a very long-term thing. Me personally, I got into it for generational wealth. I wanted to leave something to my kids, something that I didn't have. I wasn't a kid that got left a bunch of property, and I didn't get, have a rich dad that left me a bunch of money. I had a small business. I got a small car lot in Denver Grove Heights. So that is where I kind of started the basis of my business. However, I did know I wanted to get into real estate development because of my children. I wanted to be able to leave them something. And that was my drive. I also got into affordable housing because I was the product of affordable housing. I lived in affordable housing. I also got pushed out of places and seen my parents pushed out of places due to rent increases. So that was another motivation for me to want to actually get into the affordable housing space. As I said, this is absolutely long-term. This isn't something you want to get into if it's, you want to be in and out in short-term, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. This is something you're going to be into it for the long term, and it's not going to be something where you're going to make a ton of money doing so. This is more like a legacy building tool. However, they give you the tools to be able to actually climb the hurdle, to be able to make that actually feasible. I mean, if you look at, let's just say a typical $3 million apartment building, 20% down, $600,000 cash, that's a lot of money to come up with. I probably couldn't call 10 people and borrow $6,000 from them right now. But there are ways, and there are ways that you can close this gap by having these funding sources stacked on top of each other. So you can actually get the gap down to 5%, and then also what I did with the city was I did a trade-off. So with their program, I offered the city to, I think 80% of my units were affordable housing units. And what they did in turn for me is they gave me $40,000 per unit for every single unit that I was going to make affordable. So that was money that I stacked on top of the 95%, and I closed the gap even more. So that, it just goes to show you how. Now, also, I stumbled across Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. Not only do they do acquisitions, but they do new developments. I actually had 2 new development projects under contract as well, one in Denver Grove Heights and then one in South St. Paul. I kind of reverse engineered those, and I kind of called the city and I asked the city, this is just being resourceful. I called the city. I said, hey, I'm looking to, put up an affordable housing apartment building. Where would you, think one would fit at? And the city planner actually gave me a few ideas and a few different people to call. And through calling those people, I was able to acquire another project and put it under contract. And they were going to fund that project as well. So they're a great resource, and I just speak upon that because I was sitting where you guys were 2 years ago. And like I said, I just bought my first duplex, and that was just an owner-occupied duplex. And, through this meeting here with David, by chance, I ran into the Greater Minnesota Housing Resource, and then through networking and other things, I was able to execute and actually purchase an apartment building. And then I went back and did it again. So, and I'm actually got another one under contract right now that I'm looking to probably try to close early January. So David just wanted me to kind of tell my story that this actually does work and it can be done because like I said, he just invited me, just like every one of you here, to come, get some information. I took that information, I ran with it, and I used the resources, and I executed the plan I had. Was there anything you want me to touch on, David? No, absolutely. I mean, in just this year, I've got a few 100,000 already in equity, but I put some of my own money into the properties myself as well. But it's how quick it can happen.
Thank you. Give him a round of applause. That's an amazing story. It's a wonderful story.
Test.
Brother Paul, go ahead.
All right. Hey, can y'all hear me? All right. I'm Paul Rhodes. I also know David went through the Build Wealth program. So my testimony is, 2010? I think about 2010, I bought my first house. Was outside of Build Wealth. Ended up getting into a bad, I thought it was a fix, but it wasn't. It was an arm. So about 3-4 years after I got in, man, my payments went up triple. And it was like, what should I do? Should I keep making payments or let it go? Household, we was arguing all the time about it. I just finally said, forget it. I'm just gonna go ahead and let the house go. I moved to an apartment. Had an apartment, loved it. Took my 3 kids, went to an apartment, 2-bedroom. I stayed there for 1 year, and I was like, you know what? I was comfortable. I had, underground parking, indoor, outdoor pool. I was loving it. I said, no, I need my own apartment. I need my own house. So I ended up just saying, it's time for me to get a house. I already been through the Build Wealth program. So I went through the Build Wealth program. I already knew my credit was getting better, was getting good. That same Sunday night, I think, I told my wife, I said, we're going to get a house. That Tuesday, I saw a house online. I said, I want 4 bedrooms, at least 2, 3 bathrooms. For the kids. I don't want them in my room, and I don't want to be bothered with them. I want it big enough where they can be on one side and I'm on the other. So that Tuesday, I saw a house. It was 6 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms. And back in St. Paul, I was like, oh, I know where this house is. I just been riding past, never noticed it, and ended up viewing it on Tuesday. Then got in about 2-3 months later. We was able to close, get in there. Then I was working at Wells Fargo. I've been there for 20 years. I started in January 2000. January 2021, Wells Fargo decided they was going to eliminate my position. So I'm at home like, oh, nothing don't really faze me. I'm like, oh, well, I guess something, God will have something for me. So I ain't worried about it. So then I ended up starting my online business, like selling stuff online, buying stuff. So then I ended up saying, let me see what businesses are for sale. And I ended up I was looking for a car wash or a laundromat. Something I said, I can have cash flow they don't have to know about. So then I was like, that's what I was looking at. And I was like, let me see what restaurants. Never worked a day in my life at a restaurant. Never did fast food. End up seeing a Subway. I'm like, I guess. I ended up reaching out to the broker, like, yeah, I'm interested in all this. I think I was in August. He was like, you serious? I was like, yeah, I didn't know where it was. Come to find out, it's right down the street from the house, right across the street from my sister didn't work. I'm like, oh, man. So I said, y'all going to be over here all the time trying to get food. So I ended up buying it. I think I bought it for $80,000. So, but it was cheap, $80,000. $80,000. All right. And then so I'm in there. So I bought that in January 2022. So I've been there running it. It's fun. Got my kids working, my mom's working. They out my pockets. I don't have to worry about them. They was like, oh, when you're in franchise, they try to flood you with other ones. And I met this lady. She was like, yeah, don't take everyone they give you. And so I ended up, there was one on the east side of St. Paul. I already told him no. I never see nobody going that one. And then there was Egan. I said, that's too far. I'm not trying to travel that far. And then, so I just ended up backing out, saying, nope, I don't want none of them. And then the one in St. Paul on Wright Street closed in December. And then May 2023, this year, I said, man, let me go look at this one. It's right down the street from the house. It's halfway between both. I said, I can go. That's close enough. And, oh, the neighborhood's bad. I grew up in St. Paul. I'm like, I ain't scared of none of these. I'm like, come on now. My first house was a block away from there. So I was like, oh. So I ended up, they said, yeah, I know they give franchises to other franchisees. They always give them away. But they wanted me to pay. I said, why am I paying for one that's closed? So I had to put an offer in. And I was like, well, boy, I said, what you going to put an offer in for? $100. I said, she said, you know you ain't. I said, man, please. I don't need, they need it open. I don't need it. I was like, they want it open. They're going to take this $100 and let me take it. And they took it. I was like, oh, okay. But I was mad. I was kind of mad because I had to wire the money, and it was $25. I was like, man, I should have went down to $75 because now I got to wire this. I got to pay another $25 for this. So, but now I have 2 locations. I'm working on my Mall America location. I'm working on other businesses now. It's just, it's all because of Build Wealth. So I'm appreciative of Build Wealth. I'm always willing to help out, do whatever. I came here last year. I loved it. And I said, I've been asking Dave, when is it? I'm making sure my schedule is clear. Because last year, I only could stay half. I said, I'm staying the whole time. So I said, I'm not doing this again. So that's my testimony. And next year, hopefully, I'll be right here with James getting some apartment buildings. Because I've been asking Dave for 2 months. I need them apartment buildings now. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. All right. Thank you for having me back again. Welcome everybody to North Point campus. We're going to talk today about men's health and wellness. So I think it's an appropriate time in this broader conversation around building legacy to talk about our actual health and passing on a legacy of wellness and health and well-being. Because if we're not able to actually walk into those meetings or breathe well enough to hold a conversation with a financier or someone, then it's hard to kind of build that legacy. Oftentimes we have to put sweat to build some of this equity. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and it worked. So what we're going to talk about, kind of what we're worried about. So the things that we all think about but no one actually says out loud, our health and wellness, what we should do, why we should do it, when we should do it, and then how we should get it done. So the why. So the big why of this whole conversation. It's not about extending our lifespan. We hear about lifespan all the time. Lifespan is just how many years you live. I mean, I lived to 99, but the last 30 years of my life, I couldn't stand up. I couldn't breathe good. We're talking about health span. How long am I going to be healthy? Healthy enough to actually kind of mobilize, to ambulate, to get around. How long will I be healthy, like those last decades of my life? How long will I actually be able to engage? How long will I be able to kind of be doing the back and forth? If I got to go to a property and pick some stuff up, can I bend down and get it? Can I get up out of my chair without somebody helping me up? Health span, that's what we're talking about today. So, what do you think is going through this guy's mind? He looks a little nervous. He's like, the things that we all think about, if he's been to the doctor before, he may have some idea. If he has not, which I encounter all the time, I hadn't been to see somebody like you in decades. I don't know what's going on. I know my dad had a thing, my granddad had a thing, my mom had a thing, or my brother, he just got diagnosed. I just came, I need to get everything checked, doc. Hear it every day. So when we run kind of from head to toe, we can start at the top of our heads and move down to the bottom of the feet. And I'll just run a list for you to kind of orient you into kind of what what we think about when people come in to the office. And we're talking about whether the things we're concerned about that we screen is your blood pressure. So we wrap the thing around your arm, see where your blood pressure is. We check your cholesterol. We'll check your blood sugar. And you say, well, I got a little blood pressure, I got a little sugar. My cholesterol might be a little high, but why is that important? Because all those things affect the blood flow. And so if things aren't flowing well to different parts of the body, we can have different issues. So if the blood isn't flowing well to our brains, we can have strokes. So you lose the function or the movement of a part of your body. Or you can't think the way that you once did. If it moves down to your eyes, we think about glaucoma. People with diabetes are at higher risk for developing glaucoma, so that's increased pressure in the eyeball. If you have high blood pressure, those blood vessels in the back of your eye can break, so you can lose your vision. If you move a little lower, the heart is a beautiful and intelligent organ because it knows that it has to feed itself first because its job is to feed the rest of the body. So it feeds itself first with these blood vessels, and sometimes those blood vessels break or they get clogged up because our cholesterol is too high, and then we have a heart attack. If the heart doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is provide blood to the whole body, then it doesn't function. So if my heart's pumping right now and all of a sudden, I can't breathe because my heart can't keep up, so I can't breathe good. I can't move my legs the way that I want to. So then I take a break, I stop, and I let my heart catch up to what I'm asking it to do because I like to move around, like to move my arms, and my heart is speeding up and meeting the demand at the moment. It is not failing at its job. So as we move a little lower, we get to our kidneys. The kidneys are nothing but big filters. They filter every drop of blood that flows through your body. So all the toxins and things, things we might drink, things we might eat, they filter it all out. So if our pressures are high, our sugars are high, those things are toxins to those little teeny-weeny blood vessels, and they damage those. And then we can lead to kidney disease, kidney failure. Move a little lower. This is probably the top thing that gets people in the office is when sexual function is impaired in some way. And that's not just erections. We're talking about desire as well. High blood pressure, high sugar, high cholesterol impacts all those things. Also, depression, anxiety impacts these things as well. And moving down into the legs. If those blood vessels are not pumping blood the way we want because they're impacted by blood pressure, blood sugar, high cholesterol, and other things, then we get issues with cramping in our legs as we walk. That was a high impact slide, and we'll talk about just more particularly the why. So the right side on the slide tells us that it's more common in us, meaning black people, black men, black women. Hypertension, we more commonly have it. The one next to that tells us that it's less well treated in us. So we have it more, and it's not treated better, but we have it more often than other people. This slide, the green arrow is where we're sitting. What you want to have as an area is for that to be, you want it to be light. So the darker the square, the more common high blood pressure is in that area. So if you look where all the black people live, where we're sitting, well, not all the black people, but a good number of black people live, from census tract data, higher incidence of high blood pressure. Same data for diabetes, same data for high cholesterol, same data for asthma. This is not by accident, but that's not why I'm here today, to talk about the reasons behind all this. But this is the reality that we live with at the moment. And the numbers, we want to stay in the green. So 120 over 80 is the number we're shooting for. Anything above that should raise a flag for you. So you want to go talk to somebody about it. You might live somewhere 124 over 86, and that might be acceptable for you. You might live 130 over 90, maybe not. If you're higher than that, I see people come in 220 over 160, and then we rush them off because we're in stroke range. You know, I think a big take home is if you feel funny, just go get checked out. You don't want to feel funny for a year and then it's too late. You know, something changes. It's like, man, this thing on my back been growing for 2 years. Come on in, because sometimes we can do something about those things, but we need to do something about them early. So when that thing was real small, we could have just, you know, taken that off, put some salve on it, but now it's too late. Diabetes is when the sugar, so the stuff we are eating and the stuff we're drinking, and this isn't just in a senior person's, an old man's talk. This is for young people too, because the sodas, the juices, all these things that we drink and we love as kids, the juice boxes and all that, there's so much sugar in these things, and our bodies are not fashioned to kind of live and tolerate these high sugars for a lifetime. So once we get, because I'm seeing kids that are 12, 13, 14 years old that we're diagnosing with diabetes, with high blood pressure, with high cholesterol, because of the things that have been adopted into what we call our food culture, which is an Americanized diet that we've adopted as a people. But those with kind of these high blood sugars are at increased risk for all the things we talked about before. So making special effort to adjust our diets and our intake in a way that not only impacts us, as we're talking about legacy, but changes the way that our families are eating, is critically important. And we look at cholesterol, which, if you get the report, it's just a bunch of numbers. But what it actually means is those blood vessels, if you think about like a hose, and you got your garden hose or water hose, and you water in the lawn, and you accidentally step on the hose, and what happens to that flow? It kind of gets weaker. Same thing with the blood vessel. So me stepping on that hose is the same as me having a caked up blood vessel full of cholesterol. So my blood is kind of squeezing through, trying to get by. And what happens when we have a heart attack sometimes, that blood is squeezing through and it breaks off one of those cholesterol chips and it gets lodged in one of those blood vessels. So that is why when that doc says, hey, I want you to take this medicine, or I want you to kind of eat more vegetables and increase the fiber in your diet or decrease the amount of fat you're taking in, that's the reason. It's not just because I'm trying to get you to take Lipitor or Crestor or whatever the medicine is, or I'm getting a kickback on the metformin. It's because I don't want that to break off in your heart, and then you end up in the hospital behind it, or even dead, which does happen if it's the big one. And why we like to see people, because like for things that we won't know about unless we get it checked. So we think about colon cancer. We start screening at 45. It is more common in us. Before they changed the recommendation down to 45 for everybody, it used to be black people and Alaska natives, because we had the highest risk and highest incidence of colon cancer. And we would get it earlier, and when we got it, it will be worse. Generally no real symptoms, but if something changes, like if you're a once a day kind of guy, or you every other day, or you twice a day, that's been your pattern all the days of your life, and now all of a sudden, it's been 3 days, it's been 4 days, or it's looked different. It used to come out nice and solid. Now it look like a little sliver. Something changes, something changed. So go get checked out. These are my old slides. I already said this stuff, but the gold standard is colonoscopy. But there are other options. You can get a yearly test, which is a stool test, or one every 3 years. Prostate cancer, specifically to the men. We are at increased risk. And by we, I mean black men. Particularly those of us who may have a family history, we generally start screening at 45. Some people will tell you that you don't need to be screened if you don't have a family history of it. I'm not one of those people who will tell you that, because I've diagnosed more than enough 45-year-old men with prostate cancer that we took care of that are still living and are decades older after being diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's an easy test. Everybody gets scared of the finger. It's a blood test. You can get it every 2 years, and we only do the finger thing unless something's going on. Trouble peeing, decreased force, so the stream is weaker. You get some blood in there. That usually gets people rushing in. Discomfort or pain down there. Those are the reasons to come in. Something changes. Like I mentioned, it's controversial. Charlie Wilson, diagnosed early. I think he was 55 at the time when he was diagnosed, treated, thriving. We're twice as likely to die because we don't get in early enough to get screened and get diagnosed at a younger age. So I encourage everyone to talk to your docs. If they say no, find another doc. So how do we approach and kind of do things to kind of reduce our risk for this stuff? So we need to eat food, and we need to eat real food. It's absolutely necessary to live. We don't demonize the food that we eat. But it's kind of looking back at our heritage, at the kinds of foods that we have eaten through generations. And so you want it to be real food, mostly vegetables, and just not too much of it. And so the general map of the grocery store is to kind of stay on the outside and not go down the aisle so much, get the box food, the bag food. And another thing I like to tell people, if your grandma or great-grandma, if you're blessed to know her, wouldn't recognize it, you probably shouldn't eat it. So kind of real vegetables or frozen vegetables are your best friend. So you want to stay away from the processed things and move more towards those things that are unprocessed. So meats and vegetables and less of the packaged things. You know, we're in this, Halloween is next week, so you can have some candy and all the things, but you don't want to have them every day. You know, we're not here to ruin lives, but you want to make sure that you're not treating yourself every day, multiple times a day, to the stuff on the right side, and that you're maintaining your diet with those things in the other side. And so I always like to remind people that the foods that are associated with us, like black people, there's nothing wrong with them. Don't be ashamed, don't be fooled. Traditional cuisines are regional and variable. So, you know, the most popular diet people like to talk about is the Mediterranean diet. But if you know your geography, the Mediterranean Sea, the southern part of it is northern Africa. So those vegetables that are native to the continent, that is in our heritage. Other parts of the continent, the vegetables, the meats, the beans, the rice, all those things that were transported from the continent to this continent are in our heritage. So leaning into those heritage foods, those vegetables mainly, those whole grains, that is the way to go. And so the things that we like to eat at our cultural meals, so like I'm going to have some greens. I may not make them with the ham hock on Thanksgiving. You know, I might do a smoked turkey neck or make it meatless altogether. I will have a scoop of mac and cheese, but I don't do that at every meal. You know, we're going to have turkey, we're going to have ham, we're going to have chicken. There will be a fried and a baked chicken option. You know, so you can still have the things that we all enjoy and not feel bad about it. We should also exercise. You know, if I had more time, I'd have everybody get up because the exercise changes things. So it helps to kind of get hormones moving. So it's better mood, better energy, better memory, better attention. The increases the dopamine, and it just kind of helps out with most things. And I will skip forward to this one, because what we actually just want to do is have an increase in our total daily activity. Because some of us, we don't have physical jobs, or during the day we're not up and active. So if you have a period of time where you're doing some exercise, and you do, say, like 60 minutes of exercise in the morning or the evening or somewhere midday, but then you go sit down for the rest of the day, you can just toss that exercise you did out the window, because the time you spent sitting in that chair or wherever you're sitting is just discounted the exercise you did for that hour. What you'd want to do is have your total daily exercise, there he is, your total activity for the day to be active. So decreasing the amount of sedentary time that you have, so decreasing television and screen time, and then kind of increasing your active time. And there's a recent study just came out that showed that if we do about 5 minutes of exercise, of walking, every 30 minutes, it makes up for the amount of time we're sitting. And I'm not talking about, racing. It's actually just standing up, 5 minutes every 30 minutes. So if you set the alarm on your watch or your phone every 30 minutes to just get up and walk in place for about 5 minutes, you'll counteract the impact of a sitting job, if that's something that you do. And that's easy to do, because I can do this and still talk to y'all. Or I can be on the phone, or I can, like most of us, look at the feed and kind of keep up with what's going on, or just get up and go to the bathroom. But once you've been sitting for hours and hours, that adds up. And so you want to break up that monotony and just do this, which is easy. And then eventually, once you've kind of been exercising enough, you'll be tired enough, you're going to get you some sleep. And we discount the importance of sleeping because while we're asleep, our body is repairing itself. The hormones and things in our brain kind of get around, and they kind of clean out the junk, the memories we've made, the deals we've thought about, they get cemented in. But you have to sleep. If people sometimes say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. If that's how you think, death will come sooner for you, and that's just a fact. You need sleep to live. Most of us need at least 7 to 8 hours, and I'll just leave it at that. And then, mental health challenges are more common than we admit. So if it is a challenge for you, whether it's depression, anxiety, or any of the things, many of us have come up, none of us are able to escape the traumas of this world, and particularly this country. So we could all use a check-in, whether it has a name or not. Just check in with somebody that's not your cousin, that can actually kind of give you some guidance into, unless your cousin is a clinical psychologist or a licensed social worker that does therapy, to give you some guidance on your mental health, because it's super important. And also to pass that legacy down to our kids, that it is okay to not be okay, and to seek help when it's necessary. Because depression often looks different or presents different in us. They might see me as the grumpy guy. He's always in a bad mood, and he snaps. You either overworking or sleeping too much, too little. He using. There's usually a reason. Like, why are you always drinking? Why he always this or that? There's usually a reason. And so figure out what those reasons are. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that you need a little assistance. So this is real fast. But what we talked about is we're trying to avoid the things that will shorten our lifespan or our health span. So the blood pressure, the sugar, heart disease, stroke. And, we have those things, is getting those things under control. because many of us are unable to avoid them because of the family histories. And then how to avoid them is really looking at what we're eating, how we're moving, how we're sleeping, and our mental well-being. And then when to start. That was yesterday. But if you hadn't started, you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow. But start it yesterday. And if you hadn't, do that today. Why? Again, because we want to extend the amount of time that we're actually healthy, that we're actually able to continue and to be well and to engage in community in the way that we desire, in the way that we want, and how we see ourselves. And if there are questions, please feel free. Otherwise, if you need to get a checkup or have another concern, you can go to our website or give us a call. We'd be more than happy to serve. Thank you.